My particular pleasure and honor to chair this webinar, which is going to be an exciting one, I think. And we made sure that we have excellent colleagues, panelists. And the topic is going to be quality of digital education from the teachers or educators' perspectives. My name is Helga Dorner, and I am the member of the board of Eden Digital Learning Europe, and I'm also Institute Director and Associate Professor at the Utrecht Lorand University Faculty of Education and Psychology. And I have wonderful colleagues, and we will have hopefully a very exciting 90 minutes to discuss their reflections, their research, and their presentations. And we slightly changed the order of presentations. We will start with Snežana Babic, who will introduce herself and give her professional background. Then we will ask Oksana Matyas from the Ukraine to present her insights. And then we move on to Laszlo Horváth from Hungary, from ELTE, and he's going to share some bits and pieces of his research. And then we close the session with Mirza Zizak from Croatia, and he will also share his insights about his experience. And we figured, since we have some constraints, technology and also some other constraints, that we have basically the presentations as a, in a row, and then we will have time to respond to questions. So that is going to be the schedule, so to say, for today. And I'm already looking at Snežana, although she may not see this, or this may not be obvious, but I kindly ask you to take the floor and share your presentation with us, which is going to give insights about a teacher's perspective, how this transition has worked out. So the floor is yours, Snežana.
Thank you, Helga. Hi to all. My motivation behind this paper stems from my 30-year-long experience in the field of using and adoption of new technologies in the educational context. The topics of my presentation is ensuring the quality of digital online teaching activities, one teacher's experience. Okay. I think that every modern teacher must know the answers to following important questions. How digital technologies can enhance the quality of in-person teaching? And second, how to ensure the quality of digital online teaching activities in a hybrid learning environment? The following slides represent my teaching experience during and after COVID pandemic in online and hybrid learning environment. I chosen one example of teaching activity. I will try to answer the previous questions. I will compare relied and hybrid scenarios from these teaching activities. Collaborative digital online activity in the learning system model. Okay. On this slide, you can see a teaching scenario for teaching activity that foster positive learning experience by my students, and how digital technologies can enhance the quality of in-person teaching. A teacher must balancing synchronous and asynchronous activities. Using the Moodle first step, using Moodle webinar, I give instruction for teamwork and project assessment. Then students choose team members and using forum, defining the topics of the project assessment. Students as collaborators work on the adding the wiki documents together, and using Moodle webinar, students present the results of project task at the end, and the evaluation is carried out in asynchronous form. It is my example. The aim of this activity is to facilitate learning in order to achieve the learning outcome of the subject. The teacher have a role is a facilitator and mediator. And in hyper-learning environment today, Moodle webinar is replacing in-person teaching. And in the following slides, I will try to explain how to ensure the quality of digital online activity from teacher's perspective on my example. First, technical aspect. All tools are available in one e-learning system. And second, easy of use of tools, forum, wiki, webinar system. For example, chat is a very good alternative for webinar. In my case, protection of students' personal data in the learning system, electronic availability of content, task, etc. Very important. Students don't like to use the camera in webinars. Know why? Before the COVID-19 pandemic, students didn't like to use forums, but today it is no longer a problem. Why? Students like to have all activities and learning content in one learning system. It is my teaching experience. Second, pedagogical aspect. Students choose the topic according to their personal interests. Collaborative learning model is chosen for the realization of a specific learning outcome. Students have real-time and asynchronous teacher support. It is very important. And adequate evaluation model is used for students' assessment. In the case of hybrid model, activities in a traditional classroom and online learning environment are well written. Evaluation of teaching activity, continuous interaction with students about their satisfaction and needs in online work. It is necessary, I think. It is my practice. Continuous motivation, encouragement, and guidance of students. Very important. I must have teaching scenario with technology, pedagogical model, and all tools. Teacher presents timely information during activities, synchronous communication options. It is very important. And the end, organization aspect, institutional support. We have IT infrastructure, strategies, regulation on the use of technology in teaching, evaluation of teaching quality, face-to-face and online teaching quality. What is the difference? We know. And hybrid learning environment is one of the most important models in higher education institution. What is hybrid learning environment? It's systematically model education environment based on the requirements and characteristics of the immediate and wider learning environment. The basic is choosing and connection learning activities in traditional classroom with digital online learning activities through the learning system or other system. With the addition of the mandatory interaction, the end goal successful realization of the education goal. The variety of hybrid forms that can be created poses a potential problem for ensuring the quality of digital online teaching activities in hybrid learning environment. Why? On this slide, you can see level of teacher competence for a learning hybrid learning environment. I write about this problem on conference in the 2014. It may be applied in various forms. This is a potential problem when define the necessary teacher's competence for learning. Even the slightest shift of the teachers from the center, the richer learning environment gains, and new shape in which the teacher role changes from instruction to facilitator to mediator. Their key level of the use of virtual learning environment in hybrid of virtual learning environment in hybrid environment. The first is conveyance of education content. The second level is the creation of online learning communities. And on the third level, the students' collaboration as co-authors in knowledge building. In this context, the level of teacher competence for e-learning is required changes from rather low to high. It is a big problem for define of quality teaching process. Maybe yes, or maybe no. And concluded. It is well known that the quality of any learning models depend on the majority of every component. Teachers, students, learning content, learning outcomes, technologies, institutions, etc. Create the hybrid learning environment is not easy and requires teacher to redefine existing competencies and develop new ones, during which it's essential to understand the concept of quality of education. What is a quality? And why quality is important? The quality of education process is one of the factors responsible for students achieving success. And third, teachers' competence for e-learning, online or hybrid or traditional learning is teaching is very important. And finally, I develop of a conceptual model of competencies of online teacher for application of e-learning in the hybrid learning environment of higher education institution. And according to this model, in the first dimension, the component of hybrid use of ICT is emphasis, but because it is considered crucial in the competence of teachers for e-learning and described for following. You can understand and be able to create hybrid education program and related virtual learning environment to analyze and choose education methods, pedagogical model, as well as appropriated information communication technology, according to my definition of hybrid environment. On this slide, you can see my model. Okay, and hybrid use of ICT, I think that it's very important for quality e-learning. And thank you for your attention. If you have any question or interest for my model or something else, please send on my email. You can see on this slide. And I use this lecture, my papers from on, you can see on these slides, and I want that we see on digital innovation and transformation through research practice in November. And thank you, Eden. And I want Dublin in June 2020. Thank you to all, and thank you for your attention. Okay, I am finished.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Snezhana.
Yes.
Thank you. This was very insightful, and we had some comments in the chat as well, acknowledging some of the ideas that you shared with us, including the importance of designing the activities for the students on the basis of their interests. And the other important sort of cornerstone, that teachers need support in their roles of online teachers and facilitators. And we have a question for you, and I'm just telling this to Inger Karin Eriksson, who posed this question, that we will come back to this question once we listen to all of the presentations. So we keep these on our board, on the Q&A board, and I encourage our audience to type in the questions so that we can discuss them, and also indicate the presenter's name to whom you would pose this question. All right, so thank you so much once again, Snezhana.
Thank you very much.
And we will move from Croatia to Ukraine, and a warm welcome to Oksana Matyash. And please do introduce a slightly different topic, which is going to be a tutorial model that is happening now in your country. So please.
Thank you, Helga, for a warm welcome and for inviting me to join such an outstanding panel. We'll try and share my screen with them. Haven't done the presentation in a while, so please bear with me. Yeah, Can you see my slides? If that's
Absolutely.
wonderful. So I'm very pleased to be able to share with you, some insights from the tag-based tutoring pilot program that my organization Teach for Ukraine has been piloting in Ukraine when the large-scale war has started. Before it's also important to make a statement that it's also a pilot model for learning catch-up program that has never been implemented in Ukraine before, and that we are working on right now. But before we start, just to briefly introduce myself. So my name is Oksana Matyash. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Teach for Ukraine, which is a Ukrainian education nonprofit organization that is also part of the Teach for All Global Network, present in 60 countries. Maybe some of you have heard about this. I'm also the board member of the President Zelensky's Fund on Support to Education, Science, and Sports. And it's interesting because in the morning of the 24th of February, when the large-scale war by Russia was started, we were supposed to launch the first ever scholarship program for Ukrainians to study abroad. But anyways, just a couple of words about Teach for Ukraine. So as I said, we are a nonprofit organization. We are working, before the war, we have been focusing on addressing the problem of education inequity in Ukraine that has a very specific number. Almost 1/3 of Ukrainian children, they live and study in the rural areas, and they are on average 2.5 years behind in academic knowledge and skills from their peers from big cities. And geographical location of the school has a huge impact on that, because Ukraine lacks teachers. Young people do not choose teacher's profession. We have school graduates with the worst final exam results enrolling into pedagogical universities, and after they finish them, they don't go into the school system. So unfortunately, less than 10% of Ukrainian teachers are people below 30. Teach for Ukraine also has partnership with the Ministry of Education of Ukraine, and before the large-scale war, we were present in the 5 regions of Ukraine, partnering with 18 schools and impacting almost 10,000 students. But just briefly, one last point about our model. What do we do? How we're trying to tackle the problem of education inequity. We're recruiting top graduates of Ukrainian universities, both with teachers training and without, and place them for at least 2 years in schools in disadvantaged areas, so that children are able to get the excellent school subject knowledge as well as role models in front of them. We also have partnership with one of the pedagogical universities, and we are running together master's program in pedagogy for people who are currently working in schools but without teachers training. And it's just important to mention here that unlike probably most of the EU countries, Ukraine has recently introduced amendment into the legislation that does not require a person to have a teacher's training to be able to work as a teacher. You need to have a diploma, a higher education diploma, but not necessarily a teacher's training diploma. And just now I would like to get to the brief timeline and give you a bit of a insight into the education, learning, and teaching, how it was done and is being done when the large-scale war started. So on the 21st of February, the Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine announced 2 weeks of school break. Nobody knew what will be happening. Nobody knew, the scale of the war and the scale of impact on the education system. So schools were closed once again, but this time not because of the COVID. And we had the situation when after 2 weeks, the ministry said, let's try and get back to online learning. And at the end of March, many schools, not all of them, and it's an important detail, because a lot of them have immediately become targets of shelling and bombing. They resumed learning exclusively via online modalities. And over the previous semester, the school year in Ukraine ended almost offline. But still, nearly 3 million out of 4 million school-age children were able to go back to education online by the end of March, according to the ministry. And unfortunately, the majority of them, became displaced inside or outside of Ukraine. And we already had, reports at the beginning of March that schools, became targets, and a lot of them have been damaged or destroyed by Russian forces. And just to demonstrate this is one of the partner schools of Teach for Ukraine in Borodyanka. You may have heard, it's a city that it's a small town in the Kyiv region that has has been damaged severely, and including education infrastructure. You see two photos from the school. Inside of them, one of our teachers is standing in her class of biology, former class of biology, and children were able to enter the school just to try and celebrate the end of their school year. And as I said, absolute majority of children have finished their school year online, and only 123 schools out of 14,000 were able to offer some in-person learning by the end of the previous school year. And as of September, only those schools that had proper bomb shelters in place and fulfilled the government established safety requirements, they were allowed to welcome children inside. And as of September, we saw that approximately 41% of Ukraine's education institutions, including both schools and universities, were able to reopen in September for in-person learning. But that has been disrupted so many times. I'm sure you have seen reports from, drone attacks that Russia was conducting on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. It was happening every single Monday, and when children were on their way to school. So because of that, local authorities had to, make a decision to close schools again. And in general, just to give you the, an overall understanding how many educational facilities have so far been damaged or destroyed, the number is 2,739 suffered bombing, 333 are completely destroyed. We're talking both about schools, kindergartens, and universities. It's a huge challenge, it's a huge damage, and it's a hugely negative impact on the education system of Ukraine. So given this all circumstances, Teach for Ukraine as the organization, back in March this year, we were thinking, how can we continue providing education to children despite the war? It was an extremely challenging moment for us because we saw that all of them were on the move. Teachers were on the move, children were on the move. So we had to take months to come up with the emergency response project that we call to be attack-based tutoring project. We saw that even before the war, Ukraine's education system, school system was suffering from huge learning loss, and estimates of learning losses due to the Russian invasion suggest that learning outcomes in Ukraine are now below the lowest performing countries in Europe. We're not doing great before the war. Now we are definitely doing the worst in Europe's region. And according to the World Bank, approximately the learning loss in Ukraine as of now can amount to over 1 year. That was as of spring last year. So given, how much disruption we have seen since September, I think this this amount is even bigger. And of course, all of us probably know that learning losses, they carry high social and economic costs for human capital development. So that's why we as an organization decided to focus on the problem of learning loss, and that's how we come up with the tag-based tutoring project. We also took into account the fact, and this is some data, mode of teaching and learning as of September 2022 in Ukraine. We see that only 22% actually were able to offer face-to-face in-person learning. Online, remote, almost half of it, and 32% blended. It's both online and remote, and we expect that it will go totally remote over the next couple of months, given the safety situation, as well as the heating and the economic situation as well. We tried and find examples of effective learning catch-up programs over the world, and we understood that we will not be able to offer any in-person tutoring given the safety situation, and parents would never at this point let their children have in-person learning as well. So that's why we decided to look into examples of tech-based tutoring that has been tested in other countries, and were shown to be both effective and efficient. We saw the program in Spain, in Italy, Italy. We also saw country-wide tutoring programs in the UK, Netherlands, Australia, Chile, and decided to try and pilot a slightly amended program in Ukraine. So we called it Teach for Ukraine Tutoring Program, and a brief description of the approach. We used the help of the World Bank to design and implement monitoring and evaluation system. We did understand that at that point we had zero data and zero evidence about the learning loss in Ukraine because all of the assessments have been previously canceled, and we needed, the evidence and data to inform our decisions about any further programs that we would be implementing as a learning catch-up response. So our pilot was about the following. So we were talking about classes 3 days per week, 2 hours per day, and minimum 36 hours of direct interaction with tutors. We were focusing on 3 main subjects: math, Ukrainian language, and Ukrainian history, where we have seen previously the biggest need and the biggest learning loss. At least we decided to dedicate 25% to psychosocial support. And we had on average 3-5 students per group. And of course, we needed them to have connection to the internet and to technology. And we were piloting in 2 stages. First one, pre-pilot April, May, that gave us a huge understanding of a challenge that we were working with. We surveyed our students, and we saw that most of them were under severe levels of stress. And we saw that, at that point, it was difficult to talk about any academic knowledge, any academic increase. So we had to focus the first stage of our pilot on, getting that stress level down. It was extremely important because otherwise children were asking us questions about, why do I need to study? What's the sense? Everything is falling apart. My father has been drafted to serve in the army. I've seen my, siblings suffering from the war. So we had to tackle that challenge first. That's why psychosocial support component has become an integral part of our pilot. And just to give you some numbers, the first stage involves 608 students. We did this in a way of treatment and control groups. We were testing, children who were receiving our intervention and those who did not. 75% of them were in Ukraine. A lot of them, almost 30%, were outside, on average 12 years old. And an important clarification here is that it's also a challenge that 61% of them have changed their residency since the war started, and we're constantly on the move. That also has interfered with the, with the design of the project that we had to account for later. We have recruited professional teachers and provided them a tutoring training so that they will be able to provide individualized learning support to our students. 83% of them were women, because in a lot of cases, men have been either drafted to the army, or in general, we have the majority of teachers in Ukraine females, and you see their education levels, and on average, they had 11 years of teaching experience. Also important data, we had to understand, how children will be accessing our classes, which devices they will be using. And here you see that the least devices, the least they used desktops, only 15% of students, 56%, a bit of half of them used laptop, and absolute majority, 81% have been using smartphone. So this was a very important insight for us, because we had to, basically customize our tutoring-based project so that, children will be effectively able to join classes from smartphones as well. So just to share with you main takeaways. We developed special endline and baseline and endline academic surveys, assessments with the Ukrainian Institute of the Assessment of the Quality of Education. And also we conducted a qualitative research by interviewing both students and parents, as well as tutors. We didn't see much of a significant academic difference by the end of the project yet, but we saw an increase in the satisfaction level and increase in their in the way they felt. And you see here some insights that impact was greater on treated girls relative to treated boys, for example. We saw that those students who attended the program satisfaction levels were extremely high, but that timeline was not enough for us to establish a significant academic difference in student learning outcomes. That's why we're planning to continue our pilot over the course of this school year. Some impediments that we saw, that sometimes we saw a lower attendance because our project coincided with the end of the school year, and the program was free for students, so there was no accountability mechanism, incentive to attend. We also saw that a huge challenge was low level of digital skills, both between students but their parents as well, because in a lot of cases they had to help their kids to join platforms and start the project, but they also had themselves low digital skills. That's why we developed an orientation session for parents as well. So that was like a spillover effect, improving digital skills for parents as well. Not going to be focusing on that much. But we saw, again, extremely high engagement rate between those students who attended classes. And one of the reasons we think is because for students, in a lot of cases, education has become the only alternative reality to the world that they live in, and the only opportunity to be surrounded by peers. So that's why our satisfaction levels very, very high. As you see, 97% seem happy, calm, and relaxed. Some data about the student satisfaction, because as I said, we have developed a monitoring and evaluation system and took it very seriously because we wanted to get the most cost-effective way by the end of the project, and transfer it to the ministry and potentially make it a national learning catch-up program, but we're still in process of doing that. Parent satisfaction was also high, and tutors, they showed an extremely high sense of self-efficacy and willingness to help their students, not only because they were extremely good teachers, but also they saw a huge relevance and importance to be there for their students when in a lot of cases their schools could not provide any education at that point. And just to conclude, our next step is scaling out the program in the form of the randomized controlled trial, which will be the first randomized controlled trial in Ukraine's education system. We will be doing 3 more rounds of tutoring during 2022-23. We are also planning, to develop multiple resources for children and strategies to equip them to be able to support children, both to address the learning catch-up loss, the learning loss, but also to be able to effectively provide the much needed psychosocial support that has become now inevitable for the purposes of providing effective learning in Ukraine right now. That's it. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that was useful and insightful for you as well.
Thank you so much, Oksana, and we greatly appreciate that you joined us today and shared these incredible, achievements. And I hope to be able to discuss some of these insights towards the end of the session. So I encourage again our audience, if you have questions, please type them in to the chat, and we will be looking forward to discussing those. And from Ukraine, we are coming to Hungary, and I pass the floor on to Laszlo.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. It's a bit hard to come after this presentation. I'm still impacted by it. So I just wanted to extend my good wishes and wish you all the strength to continue with your efforts, because I think it's very important that you are doing. And with that, I try to share my screen. I hope it's visible.
Yes, absolutely.
So my presentation will tackle quality from the perspective of a little bit of policy, from the perspective of school-based school teachers and higher education-based teacher educators in relation to how they can develop 21st century skills with digital technologies. The main frame of the research that I'm going to present is this skills ecosystem approach, which is, I think, a useful approach. It means a self-sustaining network of workforce skills, knowledge in an industry or a region. And it is quite interesting from the education system perspective, because we can think about these different stakeholders like the economy as the training system, which is itself impacted by digital transformation, but is also need to adapt to help learners better adapt to the changing world of work. On the other hand, the training system for the education sector is in a twofold role, because it's not only the site of skills formation, but also the site of skills utilization. So those pedagogical skills that we train teacher educators, for example, are the ones that are used in schools. But if we think about workplace learning, these are the skills that are formed at the workplace as well. And from the perspective of the labor market, we can think about this teaching profession as a much wider than the school system, because it includes, and especially nowadays on the rise, edtech companies and other players as well that can utilize these skills that the system provides. A useful framework from the OECD is the skills strategy, which emphasizes not just the development of relevant skills, but the using of already existing skills effectively in work and society. And of course, related to that, it is important to talk about the strengthening of the skills systems governance or the policy level. So some interesting issues related to Hungary. According to the ZDF forecast for Hungary to 2030, teaching professionals will be among the most coveted professions in terms of employment change, absolute numbers. So it's on the rise, definitely, based on these forecasts. And also, if you look at the skills for job database from the OECD, in Hungary, the education and training skill is the most wanted one. And of course, teaching professionals are the ones who are the most important players using these skills. And this is considered as a hard-to-fill occupation in Hungary. If you look at the data from the PIAC survey, it seems that teaching professionals in Hungary feel that they have the skills to cope with more demanding duties than those that they are already performing, and they need more or less a little bit of further training to cope with these existing duties, but the majority of them do not. So it signals that we do not use these existing skills very effectively if what we can see here is true. And of course, regarding teaching professionals, their most used skills involves a lot of online activities, ICT-related tasks as well. And this research that I'm going to present today is trying to uncover this skills phenomenon related to ICT in depth from an online survey conducted recently. It was targeted on school teachers based on a stratified sampling on region and school type in Hungary, and it was a representative sample. And university-based teacher educators, it was a bit harder for population to reach, because who are the academics involved in teacher education programs can change to semester based on HR decisions and availability. But more or less, we could identify those actors that were relevant from our study. In the survey, we focused on many things, but what I want to highlight now is the skills to develop 21st century skills with digital technologies. For this, we used Waltonen and colleagues' scale of the TPEC 21. I'm going to introduce it next slide. We tried to explore teachers' teaching strategies in related to online environment. For that, we used models provided by Ersted and colleagues. And we had several questions regarding the perception of the skills ecosystem the importance and realization of communication between the skills formation and utilization sector, regional characteristics, and the status quo, the supply and the demand regarding these skills. So the TPAC 21 scale is of course based on the TPAC model, which contains the pedagogical, technological, and content knowledge and their intersection. And what is added here is these 21st century skills. So all the TPAC elements are asked in relation of these skills that you can see here. So the question goes, in teaching my own subject, I know how to use ICT as a tool, for example, for sharing ideas and thinking together, for students' reflexive thinking, for students to plan their own learning, etc. And as you can see in the graph, there are not so much differences between school teachers and university-based teacher educators, only one dimension to support students plan their own learning. University-based teacher educators have a slightly higher rating. But overall, all the ratings are quite high on this 6-level scale. It could be higher, but it's not that bad overall. But this is the general landscape. Looking at the other substantial part of the research, the teaching strategies, here are the 8 models that we have used based on Erstat and colleagues model. We added an additional one, this last one, the traditional information transmission model, because it was not covered in these ICT related models. But as you can see, I think the names are quite speaking for themselves. So student collaboration, student research, product model, outside collaboration model, opening up school-based learning, personalized and deep learning, and a model that is focusing on integrating formal and informal learning settings is what we have. And you can see the general statistics of the 2 sectors. The PE, public education, is for the school teachers, and the HE, higher education, is the university-based teacher educators. And as you can see by the asterisks, by the name of the models, many of them have a significant difference between these 2 groups. So it's a much more diverse landscape than the TPAC model. And it seems that the highest strategies are the personalized and deep learning and the traditional information transmission model. And you can see it's on the contrary for the school teachers and the higher education players. But of course, it's not just the base numbers that are interesting if you're thinking about this ecosystem perspective. Of course, we can have a look at the connection of these 2 elements, the TPAC model and the teaching strategies. So one of our questions was how ICT integrated teaching strategies influence the level of this TPAC. So we have calculated the mean score of the 7-item of the TPAC scale and explored how the different teaching strategies relate to this TPAC level. And it seems that for both school teachers and university-based teacher educators, the model is significant and has a great R² score. And it's mainly about the student collaboration model and the personalized and the deep learning model. So these are the most important teaching strategies that are influencing the level of teachers, how they can develop students' 21st century skills with digital technologies. I think if you think about it, the collaboration and the personalization are quite closely related to these skills, of course, and given that they are quite widespread, so this personalized and deep learning was among the highest, it is a good idea to think about it as a possible focus for teacher education and continuous professional development of teachers if you want to develop these TPAC competences further. And of course, with that, we can have a look at the regional aspects of these elements. And here we can see this level of TPAC 21 based on regions of Hungary and of course the 2 subsystems. And what is interesting that there are no significant differences between school teachers and university-based teacher educators, nor between the regions themselves. But if we took these two things together, the region and the subsystem, then we can have significant differences. So it seems that, as you can see here on the post hoc test, the different players from the different regions have differences in this level of feedback. For example, you can see the Great Plain in the north, there are not so much differences. But if you have a look at central Hungary, school teachers have a lower score of the TPEC than university-based teacher educators. And they are among the same level as university-based teacher educators in the Transdanubian region. So if we would project the schools and the higher education institutions in this map, we could have an in-depth, detailed analysis of what the specific teacher education institutions are doing, how they are connected to schools in the region, whether or not there are feedback between the different players. And actually, we have a very basic question related to that. We asked the respondents whether they think that the employers or schools should influence stakeholders of teacher education by providing feedback. And of course, in teacher education, I think there are lots of opportunities arising naturally to provide this feedback or learn from each other. And of course, everyone stated that this is, yes, very important. There is not such no big differences between the two groups, neither between regions. But if you look at the right-hand side, the realization, whether or not there is really this feedback is present in the system, the numbers are quite depressing. University-based teacher educators are a bit more optimistic in this regard, but still on this 6-level scale, they are around 3. So it seems that there is a lot more to improve in that regard. So if we conclude by looking at the model from the skills ecosystem approach, focusing on the supply and demand of skills that can help teachers to develop students' 21st century skills with digital technologies. From the demand side, if we have this question that how they rate their teaching education, how they prepare them for these skills that we have mentioned before, and where they said that they are underqualified, we have categorized under high demand. And if they said that they were overqualified, we categorize it as low demand. And for the supply scale, we have used this self-rating of the TPEC. And based on the interquartile range, we concluded that if they were above 4, it constituted for low supply. And if they were above 5, it considered as high supply. So in this regard, as a conclusion, the Hungarian system falls in the skills gap and shortages part. So there is a high demand for these skills and low supply in this regard. So we have much more to improve. And for this ecosystem approach, it's not only the work of the university-based teacher education system, but also schools as workplaces and workplace learning to foster these skills. Here we can see the detailed statistics on that. So you can see between the regions how the demand and supply are. And as a conclusion, I wanted to highlight this very important strategic document, which is a policy document ordered by a government agency, but yet not officially applied in the policy discourse. But still, it was an educational technology pillar of the National Educational Innovation Strategy of Hungary, which we have developed. And this is only to provide a bigger perspective. So what we have talked about is falling under one category here, supporting the organizational and HR conditions for EdTech innovation. And in order to reach our goals, to establish a system of educational technology innovations which could foster efficient and fair education, which could lead to the overall objective of the knowledge-based innovative economy and society, there are many other tasks as well. So in this presentation, we only highlighted a very small portion of this system, but we need to think about the broader edtech industry and the broader learning industry in order to foster quality teaching and learning in digital education. Of course, taking into consideration infrastructural conditions and curriculum conditions and implementation principles as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that it was interesting for you. If you have any questions, unfortunately, I won't be able to stay until the end of the session, but you can reach me via this email, and I'm happy to engage and answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laszlo. And I'm not saying I'm happy to see the results, but I'm happy about the research that it's happening and that we have such results so that we can take action eventually. So thank you once again, and then we go back to Croatia, and I give the floor to Mirza, who is going to be presenting his insights from his own institutional perspective, University of Zagreb.
Thank you, Helga, for inviting me to this conference. I hope that this presentation will open some questions. I'm a professor at the Department of Physiology and Immunology and head of Office for E-Learning at the School of Medicine, University of Zagreb. And today, I'm going to talk about implementing of a flipped classroom. So it's an innovative model in immunology course. So the title of this presentation is Flipping Gently. Reason for that, when you do some introduction of some new models, you have to be very careful doing that step by step, not only for teachers, but also for students, because it's new things and you have to be very carefully what you're doing and how you are trying to implement. So results that I'm going to show are results that we are implementing for the last several years. And we think there is something in innovating and introducing flipped classroom in our class. So when we talk about flipped classroom, there is, I think everybody knows, flipped classroom means flipping the classical traditional way where students prepare the content of the teaching topic before coming to the class, and class time is used for active interaction. So before coming to the class, we call that asynchronous learning, and the interactive work during the class time, it's synchronous learning. However, since I'm a partner at a RAPID project, which is co-founded with Erasmus Plus program, it is a project that just very soon it will end, but we are starting with a new EODLW program, where we are analyzing the effect of flipped classroom, so innovation in teaching in high education. And what we found by searching how people use that flipped classroom approach and the results, we found out that there was a two group of people. One that see flipped classroom as student preparing before the class. Doesn't matter which way they will prepare the topics, and that they have ability to assess, evaluate what they learn. And second group of the people who thinks or who takes the same things, but for them having and preparation is very important, and that preparation has to have pre-recorded video lectures. And we are the one that belong to the second group, where we think that pre-recorded video lecture is the most important part of the flipped classroom approach. Second, we are offering students different e-learning technologies, such as interactive materials, self-assessments, assignments, collaboration to the forum discussion, animation, and videos. And also very important, it's learning outcomes, which I'm explaining later on one. Second, it's synchronous learning. So it's the second part of the flipped classroom approach, where students get in contact with teachers either in classroom or online through the conference room. In the classroom, they are trying to clarify what is difficult to, the topics that are difficult to understand part. They are discussing and presenting concepts, solving some problems, analyzing case study. So when I come to the class and my colleagues who are using that approach, the first question after saying hello is what you found hard to understand from the preparation materials. So on the beginning, you will find out that if the flipped classroom is a new method, that very few people, very few students ask any question. But very soon after, when they see that without asking question, they will stay without answer on some hard parts of the topics, they will start asking more and more questions. But on beginning, when student doesn't have questions, we are discussing about topics through the learning outcomes. And that's the reason why learning outcomes are so important for us. So for us, when we talk about flipped classroom approach, for us, it has to first have a pre-recorded video lectures which will replace the lecture in the classroom. Also, it has to have a self-assessment quizzes for students to evaluate and assess what they learn and how they well understood what they are preparing for the class. And third one, for me, also equally important is for teachers. They have to stimulate active interaction, but what is the most important, with all students, because with such approach, that is one of the motivating factors for students. So what we learned when we talked with students and did the interview with students, first, we found out that students understand that they take responsibility for their learning. Also, they found out they learn at their own place. So this new approach gives them different way of learning. Also, these are a personal learning because through the flipped classroom, we are giving them different e-learning materials presented in different ways. So covering different student learning styles. Also, students find out that their engagement in learning is much wider than was before. They have to learn before in asynchronous learning, during the class and after the class. Such approach, flipped classroom approach, gives teacher more time for interactive work and also give them opportunity to make classroom as active learning environment. I will explain what does it mean. In this next few slides, I will show how does it look like our course that was prepared in flipped classroom approach. Each of topics, learning units have the same design. So that was important for us that students can find out easily what they are looking for. First of all, we are starting with learning outcomes, which is very important not only for students, but also for teachers, because we have several teachers teaching the same topic. So they can do it in their way. They can work in their way of teaching, but they have to cover learning outcomes. Also, it is very important for our students because medical students using books that are not intended for the students. It's mostly for residency. So in that case, the books are much bigger than students need. So learning outcomes helps them to focus on important topics. Also, learning outcomes is the base for creating our video lectures for students and base for discussion in classroom. The next group of the learning materials are pre-recorded video lectures and followed with PowerPoint presentation. When we did on beginning, a few years ago, our video presentation were up to 20 minutes. But today, when we talk with students, when we know how students think about, our priority is to make a video presentation not longer than 10 minutes. So small chunks that can explain exactly what students need to know. There are different approach, different professors have different approach. Some of them covering the whole topic. I'm the one of them thinking that this is the best way. Some other covering just what is the most hardest and what is the most important for the topics. But whatever approach is, what is not covered by video presentation has to be explained during the class time. Self-evaluation test is important for students to test, to evaluate how well they understood what we are presenting through video presentation, what they read from the textbook and other learning materials. Also, we had previously forum discussion. It was very important for us before, but very soon we understood that student doesn't like that, especially medical students. So when we had the forum discussion, only few students were discussing. But what is the most important? A lot of students visiting that discussion. You can see just one discussion had 2,000 visits from only 180 students. So what we did in forum discussion, we were using questions from the test that has the lowest score and asking students to explain why A, B, C answer is, for example, is not correct and why D is correct one. So they have to go too deeply, and that is important for students, obviously, when you have 2,000 visits, to learn something from that. Today, we are not emphasizing this forum discussion, but we didn't give up still. Also, for a medical study, it's important case clinical part. So we are introducing more and more clinical cases in basic science that students can understand why they need to learn so deeply and so wide some basic stuff and connect that with clinical parts. And also additional learning materials. There are great stuff from YouTube and other video channels on the internet showing some animation video presentation, real life cases in medicine. So we are using that, selecting very carefully and giving students that can help them to understand better what they are learning. And each our learning units, for example, this is transplantation immunology, previous was cellular immunology. They all are organized the same way. So what we did survey each year to check how well they are accepting this new methodology and introduction of flipped classroom approach. So our generation has around up to 350 students, and they used to be divided in two groups. We call that turnus 1, turnus 2. And in each turnus, there are 180 students, up to 180. And this is a result of one of these turnus group. And as you can see, 91% of students took a survey and give us real what they think about a new approach. On the graph is shown just the percent of grades of these 91% that took a survey. So what we ask them to give us answer. First, we wanted to see if our class was well organized in sense of we are introducing new methodology. Is it acceptable for students? And as you can see, in the blue one, it's totally agree. Dark blue, it's mostly agree. The next one is partial agree, and the last one is disagreement with the question. So 92% of students thinks that new approach and organization of management of the course was well organized. Next one, we asked them, are they satisfied with the new model? And 84 students said they are satisfied with the new model. Then 78% did adapt to the new model. Have in mind, this is a new for them, completely new approach for them. Then 77 said that flipped classroom model had positive effect on their preparation for final exam. 75% said the flipped classroom method is better and more useful model than classical teaching. 77% said that flipped classroom method had motivating effect on their work and their learning. 86% said that pre-recorded topic video lecture, this is a lecture that we recorded, are the most useful form of teaching. Also, 58% said that self-assessment tests were were most useful teaching materials. At the end, we asked them what they were using among all these e-learning materials that we offered to them, and what we found, they could choose the three of them, that learning outcomes, textbook, video presentation, and self-evaluation quizzes and YouTube videos are the most useful e-learning materials for our students. So next we wanted to see, okay, we introduced a new method, whether this method has some effect on final exam. So I compared written test exam results on 2017 and 2020. 2017-18 was time where we didn't have flipped classroom approach, and 2020-21 we already introduced the flipped classroom approach. And as you can see from these two tests, students who had flipped classroom had a little bit better score. And the difference is just 5%. Only 27 students fail on this exam comparing 32. And you could say 5% is not a big deal, because among 180 students, 5% is just less than 10 students. But this, our second goal was, can we, by introducing flipped classroom approach, move students' grade from CD to AB? And as you can see, results. 2017-18, without flipped classroom, 26 students had grade A and B. When we introduced flipped classroom, more than 44, it's around 44% of students moved to grade A and B, showing that flipped classroom obviously helped them to earn better grades in our class. I was preparing both of these tests and tried to get rid of bias on the second test, 2020-21. I tried to have almost equally hard tests as 17-18. Even at the end, it came out that this 2021 was a little bit harder. So what we learned, self-motivation of students is a key for success of flipped classroom. Second, encouraging students to participate in discussion can be really challenging. And obviously, flipped classroom have some effect on improving grades. So question that we were asked, is it enough to say on the beginning that flipped classroom method is used in the course? Second, how to motivate students to prepare learning material before the class, and what can be motivating factor? And this is our recommendation based on our experience. If your school doesn't use flipped classroom approach in every classes, so your course using flipped classroom, then you have to. If you want to have successful flipped classroom method approach, you have to do next. Before each teaching unit, you have to send a note to student group describing what they need to do, what they need to read, to watch, to use, what quiz they need to take before coming to the seminar. We were checking and found out, if you don't send notification, most of the students usually don't read, only read obligatory chapter from the textbook. Very rarely they use other e-learning materials. I'm talking about majority of the students. And second thing, which is really important, teacher needs to interact with all students during class time, because when students know that they will interact with teacher will talk with them, then it is major motivating factor for preparation for the class. And the last, we wanted to check if this notification is important. So we compared last year self-evaluation test, results of self-evaluation test last year and this year. Blue one on the left, it's last year, and as you can see, that was a student could take a self-evaluation test without any prerequisite. They didn't need to watch video, they didn't need to read and prepare except textbooks, of course. And result of the self-evaluation, it's Gauss curve in two tests. Next week, we're going to have a third test. On the right, the red graph shows result of self-evaluation test. But in that case, student can take this test only if they watched video lecture, they read learning outcomes, they watch PowerPoint presentation, they watch YouTube videos, and then they are allowed to take a test. And the results are expectable. We are expecting that most of the students will have much better results, but results are even astonished us. As you can see, more than 75% had the highest grade in both tests, showing that such approach, when you notify students what they need to do, what they have to watch and read, they will give us better results. I hope it was not so fast because I was trying to reach the time frame that I got. So if you have any question, I'm available. Thank you, Helga.
Thank you, Mirza. Wonderful. And you were so collegial that we have time left for discussion and questions. And I have already seen some questions in the Q&A section, and I saw that Snezhana and Laszlo have already responded to those questions in writing. So Inger's question, I think, was targeted at Snezhana, and she responded in writing. So maybe we should move to Alistair Creelman's question. How do you help students learn how to create a supportive and inclusive group culture and learn how to collaborate? And this is a question to all speakers. So whoever wants to jump in, please do so. If Snezhana would like to add further thoughts, this is the moment to do so.
Thank you, Helga. I have three questions, and I write three answers. First, I think that I have a timetable for student activities. It is very good for teaching, and we define all activities in the term plan on first day in a classroom or Moodle or the other environment, and we define rules and rules. Defined role, it's very important in traditional classroom and in online environment, I think. And defined rule is very important too. And I think that is my colleague Mirza right, that teachers need to interaction with all students. I think that is a big problem in my case too. And teachers must have competencies, but it is a new time for all teachers in the world. And I think that is all methods pedagogical model is very good, and it is my choice. And thank you.
Thank you. How about a question to Mirza? What supports are available for students during their online learning journey? Is there a difference in the level of support directed at mature students or mature learners?
what we are doing, we have our own LMS system. So everything that we want to give to students, we are doing to this system, and they are. This is something that students doesn't have any problem with that. So what is the major problem that we had is teaching our teachers how to present, how to prepare, and what is important. For my opinion, which is I didn't find so wide dispersed among the people, is learning outcomes. For me, learning outcomes is the most important things because it has several goals. One, helping teachers, because I can be great teacher for students, but great teacher doesn't mean that covering whole learning outcome that has to be covered for some topics. So this is one thing. Second, it's for students. We learn from students when they have very clearly what they need to know, what we are expecting for them. They can easily learn. They can be easily dedicated to the topic that they have to prepare. If it's something much wider, they lose motivation to work with big chunk of text or information if they don't know what is more important, less important. I didn't emphasize before, when you have two things, teacher's presentation, which I think is the most important. Why? Because when teacher talks to students, that's direct contact, but also through the video presentation, he will or they will emphasize what is more important and less important. In the book, you couldn't see that. For book, everything is the same. You couldn't make a book with all the time small letters, big letters, and so on. So this is one of the things that can help a lot students to be motivated for preparation, for learning, and teacher for teaching. So having some learning management system that will help to have on one place everything that they need, what Snezhana said before, that is really important for them, and that will be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we have another question, and I think this is for Oksana. Do you want me to read it out, or do you just respond? How shall we go about it?
You mean the one that you sent in that was sent?
Yes, there is a webinar chat from Henrietta Carbonell. We have a question about your presentation.
Yeah, it's about the should we not be focusing on should we be focusing on traditional learning, or should we be focusing on student well-being and dealing with the trauma? I think it's just important here to make one distinction. Currently, Ukrainian children displaced inside and outside of Ukraine, there are very different groups and very different learners. There are groups of children whose education and whose learning has not been affected that much as others because they were in relatively safe areas. Their parents were better, more well off. They were able to secure them to the safe place, and their learning has seen very little disruption, right? Meanwhile, there are students that have seen, and have been through the trauma themselves, fleeing their homes, seeing their parents being, sometimes abducted. And there are also students whose education has not been able to renewed because they are in remote areas. And the only way, means of transport would be to have school bus coming and picking up you and bringing you to school. But school buses in Ukraine have been transferred for the military needs, for humanitarian aid needs. and just we don't have enough money in the budget to buy enough school buses to secure the education for such children. And all these different groups of learners, they have different needs, right? There are still students in Ukraine who are seeking, who are eager to learn. They need this knowledge, they need this progress, they need this new skills, while there are students who are not capable of grasping new information, right? They really need, the only thing that they need is this psychosocial support. So the first thing, it's important to identify and with the proper instruments, for example, like trauma sensitive approach to teaching that teachers should receive, how you identify these different groups of learners in your classroom. And it will be different for students in primary school or in secondary school. For example, with our tag-based tutoring program, we were targeting on purpose students in secondary schools between 5th and 10th grades, because we did understand that, primary school children, their needs are very different. And they've also been through COVID in the last, almost 3 years. So their learning is in a very different place. And we were also not equipped best to support students like that. But so I think it's just important to keep in mind that the complexity of the situation, and how it is important to first identify the type of student you're working with. But the problem that the person that asked this question has raised is that many parents who have moved outside of Ukraine are their children are going to local schools, but also at the same time they are attending schools in Ukraine, online learning, because they are afraid that when they will have to go back to Ukraine, if they don't attend the school, meanwhile, they will just not be accepted back, right? And I think there's just a bit of a misunderstanding and miscommunication, from what is coming from Ukraine. We don't have, for example, a practice of leaving students at the same, for the same year, the next year. I think all of the learners this year, they have been automatically transferred to the next grade. And it's just important to bear in mind that, by the end of the day, these are the parents that are making individual choices for their children, right? Children themselves don't have that much power to impact their education choice. And in a lot of cases, Ukrainian parents are sometimes, not taking into consideration the workload of their own child, right? And not necessarily the children can communicate properly, that they're not coping well with the workload, right? Because by the end of the day, parents think that they have their child's best interest in place, while, a child is not able to communicate properly with their parents. So, I think it's just a huge miscommunication problem as well. But by the end of the day, what we have been trying to advocate for is that every, single lesson, every single teacher, especially in Ukraine, needs to be trained at the within the MHPSS support system, mental health and psychosocial support system, because sometimes during the lesson you may have a child that suddenly, and I'm telling you this, sharing from the practical experience. Our teacher shared recently a story when by the end of the lesson, one of their students got a message to her phone informing her that her dad was just killed at the front line. So it was happening in the middle of the lesson. And then, she started crying, and the whole class started crying, right? Because their parents are also serving, in the army or have been drafted. So, how do you cope with that? And not necessarily also parents are equipped well to deal with the trauma of their children, because parents themselves live through the trauma, right? And, unlike in other countries, psychosocial and mental health in Ukraine is something you would not be necessarily talking about, right? So we're in the very, very beginning of this very long journey of transforming and reimagining education system of Ukraine to meet the new needs of both learners and educators and teachers, first and foremost. I'm not sure I was able to 100% directly respond to your question. Just, wanted to give like an overall bigger perspective into what Ukrainian children, parents, and teachers are facing with. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Henrietta is responding to you and thanking and acknowledging the response. So the others can read that as well. And Catherine, has also shared an insight in the chat. So I encourage everybody to check the chat. And I'm looking at the clock, and it seems to me that the session should be over by now. And so basically the only task that I basically I'm supposed to do or conduct is to thank once again everybody, all the panelists, and of course to thank to the participants for staying with us. Thank you for the questions. And also thank you, Eden, to Digital Learning Europe Secretariat, who has been in the background supporting us. And I think that we, geographically speaking, we stayed in the region, kind of like Eastern Europe. But I think in terms of the topics that we discussed, I think are relevant, not just for European context, but also beyond. So thank you. And as you can see, we are inviting you all to another set of events that Eden is involved in, and together with another set of colleagues, and it's called the European Digital Education Hub, where we have regular webinars, meetings, discussions, and the next one is due November 28th. So those of you who wish, you can register for the event, and we are happy to have you there as well. So once again, thank you, and please do continue with the valuable work that you are doing in the various contexts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helga.
Thank you, Helga.
all.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.